Today I want to talk about the Forsaken, or the One, Elder God, Wolf, whatever you want to call it. We're just talking about that evil being in the Dark Ether, because this is a character, or a being, whatever we really want to call it, that has seemed like to be like the final boss of this game, right? Like, it feels like everything that was building up to in this game has been for the Forsaken. But is that really even the case right now? Because after Mauer Der Toten, it feels like that everything that built up to, I guess, the Forsaken's final release from the Dark Ether to enter into the regular universe was all stopped, right? I mean, think about it. Like, the whole plan of getting the Forsaken from the Dark Ether to the regular universe was by Valentina, right? He was manipulating Valentina since a young age, making her think that he was her father, and had her do pretty much everything to set up Mauer Der Toten for he could then escape. But as we all know, this plan failed, right? I mean, Valentina's dead. We sent an inversion warhead with Klaus in the Dark Ether to close off this portal and also probably do some other damage, and that seems to wrap up his entire plan. Like, his plan seems like it has failed, right? So is he even going to have a role inside DLC 4, or are we going to move on to something entirely different? Maybe the director of Requiem or something like that. And if that's the case, doesn't that seem a bit weird that we've been building up towards this being in the Dark Ether ever since the very first radios in this game, that all that led up to was Mauer Der Toten, and then for the last map we're just switching gears and doing something else entirely different? To me, that just doesn't seem like it makes too much sense. And because of this, I started looking around to find any sort of evidence or reason to believe that we weren't done with the Forsaken in this story. And luckily, I actually found one thing, and it is only one thing, and it is a quote from the Forsaken that we hear during Mauer Der Toten. Now, I do need to give credit because I did not get this quote myself. In fact, it's from a guy called Bread on YouTube, and I'll link his original video down in the description because it's not my stuff, but I am going to use just one of the many quotes. And if you do want to listen to the rest of the Forsaken quotes or any of the other Mauer quotes, because he has all of them on his channel, definitely click on that video, go to his channel, and listen to all of those. But for now, let's play the relevant quote.
Closing this portal will not stop me. I convinced the girl I was her father with ease. I will find another conduit.
So this seems like it really is playing towards the Forsaken, really isn't done, because first he starts off saying closing this portal will not stop me, so surely seems like he has some other plans to escape the Dark Ether. That doesn't include the portal that Valentina opened inside of Berlin. But then from there, he kind of gives us an idea of how exactly he plans to do that, which is quite interesting, because what he first says is that tricking the girl was easy, and that it will be easy for him to find another conduit or some other way to enter into this regular universe. And to me, my head, and I think everybody else hearing this, their heads will jump towards some other character that is helping or being manipulated by the Forsaken this entire time. And I know a lot of people will immediately jump towards the director, but I don't think the director is very likely, because he's the one who sent all of everything we ever needed to stop the Forsaken in Mauer Der Toten. He's the one who sent all the things that we needed to use to build the inversion warhead, and also sending the wonder weapon. I mean, maybe somebody may think of someone in Omega, but generally Omega, pretty much the same thing. They also wanted to stop the Forsaken. You may think Zykov, he's in the Dark Ether, maybe he is secretly the Forsaken this entire time, and he's manipulating our strike team and even Peck, because we know he's talking to them. But again, the same reason for Requiem's director and Omega is because he literally taught Peck how to build the inversion warheads, and those inversion warheads were literally made to stop the Forsaken, the only weapon that anybody on this side of the universe has, I guess, a way to fight against against the Forsaken. So again, all those characters don't seem very likely. So to me, I think of a character that has to be someone that has been doing things that maybe they don't think is bad, but for some reason they always end up being bad. And unlike Valentina, we don't need the character to have, you know, bad intentions. Yeah, Valentina was already a villain, but then she was a villain being manipulated by another villain, but that doesn't need to be the case. There could also be someone that is not a villain, but is being manipulated by the villain being the Forsaken. And this could have someone with good intentions all along, having those good intentions all thrown to the side because they're being manipulated and their actions in the end really turn out to be negative. And I think there's only two characters that may fit this role. First one being Samantha. Now, Samantha I don't think is very likely because, I mean, we just don't have any, I guess, like multiple occasions where she has done something where she thought was good that actually turned out to be bad, because most of the time she was doing stuff that was good and turned out to be good in the end. And the only exception to this is the inversion warheads, as we mentioned earlier. But I really just don't think as a character it makes sense for Samantha to, I guess, be the one being manipulated, right? I mean, it's entirely possible, but to be honest, there just isn't that much evidence that I could really build up in a video to say that Samantha is being manipulated by the Forsaken, even though that video title would get a lot more clicks. But instead, there is another character that I think is very, very interesting and may fit the bill pretty well. And yes, again, I'm talking about Ravnov. Yes, he keeps popping up in my DLC 4 videos, and there's good reason for that. And if you guys missed my previous video about DLC 4, then I may repeat a couple things I said there, but for a different context, because before I was kind of going off of all of these weird things about Ravnov, and maybe he turns out to be a villain or something like that. But this time around, we're not going with the villain angle. Instead, I want to go with unknowingly being manipulated angle. And the reason I want to do this is because just look at his previous actions. I mean, they seem like something that someone who is being manipulated would do, right? And the reason I say this is because if we look at the very start of the story of anything he ever did, being Firebase Z, Outpost 25, you would know that he told Samantha to come to Outpost 25 in order to do whatever they wanted to do. And this obviously doesn't turn out great. I mean, Samantha gets captured by Dr. Peck, gets tortured, and then thrown in the dark ether. I mean, that seems like a pretty big mistake if you ask me. And then from there, an outbreak happens at Outpost 25, turns into Firebase Z. Then, of course, when Strike Team comes to the back, that's when we fix, you know, I guess Ravnov's mistake that he did everything. Sure, he helped a little along the way, but he's the one who made this mess to begin with. And that to me seems like, well, that's not too cool. Well, maybe it's just one time. Well, then we also have the second Outbreak main Easter egg. This, of course, is where we, Requiem, the Strike Team, go under the orders, or at least the direction of Ravnov, to go help extract some Omega scientists that want to leave Omega because they think Omega is evil or whatever it may be, and go to Requiem. Of course, this doesn't turn out great at all. I mean, obviously, all of the scientists are murdered, and then on top of that, the Strike Team is captured by Omega. So again, someone who seems to have good actions is just not really turning out the way that they seem to want it to be. But that's not even the biggest one, and I've kind of alluded this for a while now, but the reason why I really think that Ravnov could really be the one being manipulated and be this next conduit for the Forsaken is because of his actions in the first Outbreak main Easter egg. Because as you guys probably remember, the whole idea of that Easter egg was to go to the rocket silos in Ruka and take those rockets, those inversion warheads more specifically, and shoot them into the middle of the ocean, because no, I guess, entity should have such I guess, powerful weapon. So they just threw it in the middle of the ocean and, we're good, right? And this really didn't make too much sense because, I mean, given enough time, couldn't Omega just make another one? But really what seems to be incredibly interesting about this is, like, who does this really help in the end? Because sure, at first glance it seemed like, oh, Omega was going to try to attack the West, or some fear-mongering and stuff like that. But then only later we learned that that wasn't the case at all. And those inversion warheads were made for the sole purpose of defending this universe from the Forsaken. That was the only defense anybody in this universe had against the Forsaken. And what did Ravnov do with it? He sent it to the middle of the ocean. In other words, not helping anybody and getting rid of the only safeguard anybody has against the Forsaken. And to me, this seems like something very easily that could happen in the case of being manipulated for things they think is a greater good. I mean, obviously, as I mentioned, all of us, when we first completed the Outbreak Mini-Circ, we thought we were doing something good. Omega, evil, they're going to attack the West, right? There was a whole thing. But it didn't turn out that that was the case, and it seemed like there was some more depth to it, and that these inversion warheads were literally made to fight the Forsaken, and Ravnov had them thrown in the middle of the ocean. And to me, if there is someone being manipulated by the Forsaken, I think mainly because of this and the fact that he got rid of, I can't stress enough, that's why I keep repeating it, that the only weapon we have to fight against the Forsaken was thrown in the ocean by him. I think that more than likely, if it is somebody, it's probably going to be Ravnov. He may not be a villain deep down inside, but maybe that's why it's called manipulation. But regardless, that's about it for this video. I'd love to hear what you guys think about everything we've talked about here today. The Forsaken, the new conduit. Do you think it's Ravnov? Do you think it's director Samantha even though I'm just not sure if it's Samantha or not. That is someone who could also be probably the second on the list after Ravnov for me. But I'd love to hear what you guys think about this whole situation. What kind of role do you guys think the Forsaken is going to play in DLC 4? But regardless, that's about it for me. If you guys did enjoy this video, definitely do all the normal YouTube stuff. Like, subscribe, bell, share, and all that great stuff. But I'm going to go, and I'll catch you guys next stream video, or whatever that may be. And laters, guys.